In the historical journey of the Turkish nation, Atatürk and the Republic of Turkey continue to exist as a continuous legacy from the past to the present. This legacy is a significant part of the evolution of the Turkish nation in its quest for national independence, modernization, and national identity. As the founder of the Republic of Turkey and the leader of the Turkish War of Independence, Atatürk led the Turkish nation's struggle for independence. Following the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, the country was under occupation, and the War of Liberation led by Atatürk was a concrete expression of the determination and will of the Turkish nation. This war is an unforgettable example of the Turkish nation's belief in independence and freedom and laid the foundation of the Republic of Turkey. Atatürk also embraced the core values of modernism, secularism, and democracy in establishing the Republic of Turkey. Breaking away from the traditional and religious structure of the Ottoman Empire, he built Turkey as a modern state. The principle of secularism represented the separation of religion and state, while modernism encouraged social change through steps such as educational reforms and the alphabet reform. This legacy laid the foundations of the Republic of Turkey. The influence of Atatürk and the Republic of Turkey is still visible in today's Turkey. The last period of the Ottoman Empire represents a challenging phase in the history of this great empire. By the mid-19th century, the Ottoman Empire was under increasing internal and external pressure. The empire was faced with military weakness, economic hardship, and tensions created by ethnic diversity. There were several main reasons why the Ottoman Empire was going through a difficult period. Military weakness. The Ottoman Empire lagged behind European military innovations in the 17th century. This led to the empire losing territory and being defeated in wars that caused internal uprisings. Economic problems. The empire's economy was weakened by a rotten bureaucracy, mismanagement, and corruption. These economic problems had a negative impact on the living conditions of the people. Ethnic and religious diversity. The Ottoman Empire consisted of many different ethnic and religious groups. This diversity caused tensions in the administration and society. There were conflicts between ethnic and religious groups within the empire. These difficulties accelerated the decline of the Ottoman Empire. Towards the end of the 19th century, some of the empire's territories gained independence and new states emerged. The last period of the Ottoman Empire led to the withdrawal of this great empire from the stage of history and laid the foundations for the Turkish War of Independence. This period is considered to be the beginning of the Turkish nation's struggle for independence and freedom and represents a step towards the establishment of the Republic of Turkey under the leadership of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. The War of Independence and the national struggle are closely linked to the last period of the Ottoman Empire. The weakness of the empire and the invading forces turning towards Turkish lands after World War I led the Turkish nation to launch a struggle for national independence and liberation. At the end of World War I, the Ottoman Empire was defeated and occupied by the Allied states. The occupation forces began to control Turkish territory. However, Turkish leaders, who opposed this situation and defended their national independence, started the national struggle. Mustafa Kemal Atatürk was the leader of the national struggle and a key figure in the Turkish War of Independence. He launched the War of Independence in Samsun in 1919 and organized the struggle for independence in Anatolia. In this process, the Turkish nation resisted the invaders with great determination and resolve. The War of Independence was not only a military struggle, but also a political, economic, and social transformation. A new army was established in Anatolia, political institutions were reorganized, and educational reforms were initiated. During this period, the Turkish nation did its best for independence and came together to preserve their national identity. In 1923, the Turkish War of Independence ended in victory and the Republic of Turkey was proclaimed. Mustafa Kemal Atatürk was inaugurated as the founder and first president of the Republic of Turkey. The War of Independence symbolized the triumphant conclusion of the Turkish nation's struggle for independence and freedom. The War of Independence and the national struggle represent a major turning point in the Turkish nation's quest for national identity and independence. This period emphasizes the Turkish nation's ability to overcome difficulties in unity and solidarity and its desire for independence. The establishment of the Republic of Turkey represents the culmination of this process and remains an unforgettable page in the history of the Turkish nation. The Proclamation of the Republic of Turkey is the crowning of a period in which the Turkish nation's struggle for independence ended in victory. On October 29, 1923, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk officially proclaimed the Republic of Turkey, marking a historical turning point for the Turkish nation. The proclamation of the Republic of Turkey was the result of the Turkish nation's struggle for independence against the invaders and internal pressures that had descended upon it after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. During this period, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk and the leaders of the national struggle worked selflessly to regain national sovereignty. The proclamation of the Republic molded Turkey under a new form of government. Departing from the religious and traditional structure of the Ottoman Empire, the Republic of Turkey was established as a secular state. Religious and state affairs were separated and the principle of secularism was adopted. Radical reforms were carried out in many areas such as the education system, alphabet, and legal system of the Turkish nation. The proclamation of the Republic of Turkey also symbolizes the importance given to women's rights. Turkish women were given the right to vote and be elected, thus women gained equality in political participation. The proclamation of the Republic emphasizes the Turkish nation's determination to build a modern state and social change. Under the leadership of Atatürk, Turkey continued on its path as a modern nation and became a recognized country on the world stage. The proclamation of the Republic of Turkey represents one of the brightest moments in the Turkish nation's quest for independence, modernization, and national identity. This date is a proof of the great will of the Turkish nation for freedom and independence and laid the foundation of the present identity of the Republic of Turkey. October 29th Republic Day is an opportunity to celebrate this important period every year with enthusiasm and pride. The foundations of the Republic of Turkey rest on the determination of Atatürk and the Turkish nation under his leadership to build a modern nation-state. An important part of this process was the principle of secularism and religious reforms. The principle of secularism represents the separation of religion and state. Atatürk believed that religious affairs should be independent of the state and adopted this principle as one of the fundamental principles of the Republic of Turkey. This aimed to create a society in which people of all faiths could be citizens equally. Religious reforms aimed to strike a balance between Turkey's Islamic tradition and the modern world. In this context, fundamental changes were made, especially in the fields of education and culture. Islamic legal systems were replaced by modern legal systems, the education system was modernized, and the influence of religion on public life was limited. However, the protection of religious freedoms was not forgotten. The Republic of Turkey protects the right of every individual to freely practice his or her faith. This approach reflects the religious diversity and tolerance of the Turkish nation. Secularism and religious reforms have played an important role in the establishment and sustainability of the Republic of Turkey. These principles and reforms show how Turkey can successfully combine both preserving religious diversity and building a modern society. At the same time, they have had a major impact on Turkey's national identity and values and represent an important turning point in the history of the Turkish nation. When the foundations of the Republic were laid, the importance of language for the national identity and unity of the Turkish nation was emphasized. In this context, the language revolution and the alphabet revolution are among the fundamental transformations of the Republic of Turkey. The language revolution involves the abandonment of Ottoman Turkish and the adoption of the Turkish alphabet. The new Turkish alphabet, adopted in 1928, was based on the Latin alphabet. The aim of this step was to enable all segments of the Turkish nation to communicate using the same alphabet. Thus, it was aimed to make language a unifying element and to popularize the mother tongue. The alphabet reform especially aimed to increase the literacy rate. The Arabic alphabet used during the Ottoman Empire was very complex and difficult to use. The alphabet revolution aimed to raise the level of education by switching to the Latin alphabet, which was simpler and more accessible. The language revolution and the alphabet revolution are one of the important steps taken to build the Republic of Turkey as a modern state and to consolidate national identity. Language as a unifying force helped Turkish citizens from different ethnic and cultural groups to communicate in a common language. At the same time, these reforms have increased the literacy rate and raised the level of education in Turkey. The historical background and cultural values of the Turkish nation were preserved in this new alphabet. The language revolution and the alphabet reform is one of the cornerstones of Turkey's modernization process and represents an important part of the Turkish nation's struggle for independence and modernization. While laying the foundations of the Republic of Turkey, radical reforms were carried out in the fields of law and education. These reforms are considered as one of the important steps of Turkey towards becoming a modern state. With the establishment of the Republic of Turkey, serious changes were made in the field of law. Modern legal systems were adopted instead of Islamic law. Basic laws such as the Civil Code and the Penal Code were adopted, bringing the Turkish legal system in line with contemporary norms. These reforms led to significant changes, especially in women's rights and family structure. The education system also underwent a major transformation during the Atatürk era. Educational reforms aimed to establish an education system based on modern science and technology. Compulsory education was extended and new schools were opened. University reforms made higher education more accessible. Turkish was adopted as the language of education and learning the language was encouraged. Legal and educational reforms are one of the cornerstones of Turkey's social transformation. While legal reforms aim to protect the rights and freedoms of individuals, educational reforms aim to raise the level of education of the Turkish nation and make it a more enlightened, conscious, and modern society. These reforms are important steps in the construction of Turkey as a modern nation-state. At the same time, they aim to adapt to the requirements of the modern world while preserving the historical accumulation and cultural values of the Turkish nation. These reforms in the field of law and education strengthened the foundations of the Republic of Turkey and represent an important part of the Turkish nation's struggle for independence and modernization. When the foundations of the Republic of Turkey were laid, great importance was attached to women's rights and social change. This is a reflection of the Turkish nation's determination for modernization and equality. Women's rights made great progress, especially during the Atatürk era. Turkish women were granted the right to vote and be elected. This made Turkey one of the leading countries in the world in terms of women's rights. Increased participation of women in public life, promotion of gender equality, and protection of women's rights became one of the fundamental principles of the Republic of Turkey. Social change took place not only in the field of women's rights, but also in the cultural and social structure. Traditional values and practices were replaced by modern and contemporary values. This was made possible by providing equal opportunities, especially in education and labor life. Women have played a greater role in education and business life. Women's rights and social change enabled Turkish society to address the historically deep-rooted problem of gender inequality. This is an important part of Turkey's goal of building a modern society. At the same time, these reforms have increased the social participation of Turkish women and revealed the richness of Turkish society. Women's rights and social change represent a strong part of the foundations of the Republic of Turkey. These reforms reflect the Turkish nation's commitment to equality and human rights and its belief in building a modern society. These important transformations have had a profound impact on Turkey's history and have been a critical part of the Turkish nation's struggle for independence and modernization. The institutional structure of the Republic of Turkey is based on a democratic republic model and is built on three main components: parliament, government, and state administration. Turkey's legislature, the parliament, is elected by representatives of the people. The parliament creates, amends, and enacts laws. The parliament represents the will of the Turkish nation and is at the center of democratic processes. MPs contribute to the governance of the country by representing various segments of the population. The government takes office after a vote of confidence by the parliament. It is appointed by the prime minister or the president and constitutes the executive branch of Turkey. The government manages the country's daily affairs, enforces laws, conducts foreign relations, and determines public policies. The government shapes Turkey's domestic and foreign policies and maintains the administration of the country. Turkey's state administration includes the judiciary, security forces, civil service, and other state institutions. These institutions are administered by the executive and judicial branches. The judiciary oversees the enforcement of laws and ensures a fair legal system. The security forces protect the security of the country and maintain public order. Public service institutions provide services to the public in education, health, transport, and many other areas. The institutional structure of the Republic of Turkey reflects a governance model based on the principle of democracy. The parliament, government, and state administration represent a balanced system by sharing the management of the country. By reflecting the will of the people, these institutions help Turkey to continue its development as a democratic society based on the rule of law. In the institutional structure of the Republic of Turkey, the army and security forces play an important role. As the unit responsible for the defense of the country, the army plays a critical role in maintaining national independence and security. The security and defense of Turkey is provided by the Turkish Armed Forces, TAF. The TAF includes land, naval, and air forces. While protecting the country's borders, the Turkish Armed Forces also fulfill various tasks such as counterterrorism, disaster relief, and peacekeeping operations. The leader of the TAF is appointed by the President of the Republic and serves as the Chief of General Staff. The military is under the control of civilian authorities and operates under the supervision of a democratic government and parliament. This is vital in a democratic system, which subordinates the military to the civilian will. The army and security forces not only protect Turkey's national independence, but also fulfill the task of ensuring public safety and public order. They bear great responsibility for ensuring the safety of the population in matters such as counterterrorism, border security, and disaster relief. Turkey's security forces play a critical role in national independence, border protection, and public safety. These forces aim to safeguard Turkey's sovereignty and territorial integrity and are tasked with ensuring national security. At the same time, the military and security forces act within the framework of democratic principles and the rule of law, thus ensuring Turkey's continued existence as a democratic and free society. An important part of the institutional structure of the Republic of Turkey includes economic reforms and industrialization. These reforms aim at Turkey's economic development and becoming an internationally competitive economy. After the establishment of the Republic of Turkey, the economic structure of the Ottoman Empire underwent a major process of change and transformation. The transition from an agriculture-oriented economy to an industry and trade-oriented economy began. Here are the economic reforms underlying this transformation. Turkey focused on industrialization in order to accelerate economic development and secure its independence. The industrialization process was accelerated especially in sectors such as textile, steel, automotive, and defense industries. Industrialization increased employment and enhanced the economic diversification of the country. Turkey gave importance to international trade by implementing policies encouraging exports. Foreign trade grew, especially in sectors such as agricultural products, textiles, and construction materials. The increase in exports increased foreign exchange earnings and the diversity of international trade. Turkey has taken important steps to improve its education system and encourage technological development. Investment in science and technology, the establishment of research centers, and the modernization of the education system have increased the country's technological capabilities. Economic reforms and industrialization are aimed at securing Turkey's economic development and independence. These reforms increased Turkey's national income, reduced unemployment, and increased the country's economic diversification. At the same time, the increase in international trade has helped Turkey to play a more active role on the world stage. These economic transformations and reforms contributed to the achievement of Turkey's goals of economic development and national independence. The institutional structure of the Republic of Turkey includes not only political and economic transformations, but also a major transformation in the fields of cultural change and art. The Republican era led to radical changes in Turkish culture, and the arts played an important role. Atatürk's era witnessed significant changes in Turkish culture. During this period, the traditional structure of the Ottoman Empire was abandoned and the construction of a modern nation-state was aimed. In this process, the Latin alphabet was adopted instead of the Arabic alphabet, which led to a radical change in the Turkish language and writing. In addition, the principle of secularism was adopted and religion and state affairs were separated. This encouraged the removal of religion from public life and social change. Art played an important role in cultural change. Artists of the Republican period tried to combine traditional Turkish art with modernism. Important works emerged especially in the fields of painting, music, and literature. Art functioned as a contemporary expression of Turkish identity. Cultural change and art signaled a major transformation in the identity and values of the Turkish nation. This transformation helped Turkey to strike a balance between the traditional and the modern. At the same time, it encouraged integration into the contemporary world while preserving the richness and diversity of Turkish culture. Cultural change and the arts coincide with the principle of democracy and freedom, one of the core values of the Republic of Turkey. These reforms strengthened the national identity of the Turkish nation and formed an important part of the struggle for independence and modernization. Represented.
Bugün Cumhuriyetimizin 10. yılını doldurduğu en büyük bayramdır. Kutlu olsun. Şu anda büyük Türk milletinin bir ferdi olarak bu kutlu güne kavuşmanın en derin sevinci ve heyecanı içindeyim.